Good morning, you're watching AnewZ. I'm Tsunami. Here are the headlines. China-US trade talks conclude without a deal to prevent tariffs from surging again. The UK is to recognise Palestinian state unless Israel meets conditions. Powerful earthquake in Russia's Far East sets off tsunami warnings in Japan, Alaska and Hawaii. The United States and China have wrapped up 2 days of trade talks in Sweden. Both sides laid out concerns from US worries over Chinese overcapacity to Beijing's frustration with export controls. Now let's head over to our correspondent in Brussels, William Denslow, for the latest.
The US trade delegation described this 2 days of trade talks as constructive, saying they'll be bringing back a positive report to Washington. The trade representatives, including US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, said that technical talks will continue in the coming days, and that will all be taken into consideration before Donald Trump makes a final decision on whether to go ahead and extend this tariff rate pause that we've seen between the US and China. He says that that is just one of the options that will be available to the US president, and he will make a final decision on where this trade spat will go next. The US representative said over the past 2 days of trade talks, a number of issues were discussed, with China touching on a number of the sticking points and concerns that the two sides have when it comes to trade. A huge issue as far as the US is concerned is feelings of production overcapacity and the impact that is having on US trade and global trade more broadly. As far as the Chinese delegation is concerned, well, they have issues when it comes to export controls from the US, something they want to see addressed. The trade team from Beijing said that they very much want to push for a continued pause of this tariff hiatus. They say that there was a candid exchange about economy and trade concerns. Over recent days, there's been plenty of speculation as to whether there will be a meeting later this year between President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Donald Trump. The delegations from the US in Sweden said that this was not an issue that was discussed. US President Donald Trump also taking to social media on Tuesday, saying that he is not seeking this meeting with President Xi. William Denslow, AnewZ, Brussels.
Brazil's finance minister says the government is preparing support for companies likely to be hit by steep US tariffs set to take effect in just days. The measures aim to cushion key exporters as economic uncertainty grows ahead of the 1st August deadline. Finance Minister Fernando Haddad says that the plan will help firms maintain confidence and investment. US President Donald Trump is raising tariffs on Brazilian imports such as crude oil, beef and orange juice from 10 to 50%. Meanwhile, Brazil's vital orange juice industry could be squeezed when the US tariff hikes kick in. Farmers say the consequences could be devastating if urgent action isn't taken.
Brazil's orange juice industry is under threat as US President Donald Trump prepares to slap a 50% tariff on Brazilian products starting August the 1st. Growers like Luiz Antonio Dutra in Rio de Janeiro fear their world-famous orange juice could vanish from global shelves.
They need to dialogue, find a way as they also depend on us, on our product.
President Donald Trump's proposed 50% tariff on Brazil could devastate the country's citrus belt. Farmers are facing plummeting prices, slowed harvests, disrupted schedules, and the possibility of leaving fruit to rot due to escalating trade tensions. Brazil supplies 80% of the world's orange juice. Just over half of that goes to the US. But with the US market under threat, farmers are bracing for big losses.
What I imagine is that we might lose our juice, which they say is one of the world's best.
Grower Delcio Capistrano says that Brazil's president must act fast.
Our president has to confront Donald Trump. Talk to him, because there's no point in talking here and there. It won't solve anything.
With prices plummeting and costs rising, Capistrano warns that many could be pushed out of business.
You can't work with that price. If they bring them to the state of Rio, the price of our oranges will drop even further.
If no deal is reached, farmers says the juice could stop flowing on both sides of the equator.
U.S. President Donald Trump warned on Tuesday that Washington will impose tariffs and other measures on Russia within 10 days unless Moscow shows progress toward ending its 3-year war in Ukraine. Trump, speaking aboard Air Force One, said he had not received a response from Russia since announcing the shortened deadline, reduced from the 50 days he initially set a month ago. He downplayed concerns about the impact of sanctions on global oil prices, pledging to increase domestic oil production. The president's warning marks a tougher stance on Moscow as he grows frustrated with Russia's refusal to agree to a ceasefire. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that the UK will recognise a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly in September unless Israel takes decisive action to ease the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and end the war. Starmer outlined 4 conditions for Israel.
Britain will recognise a Palestine state at the United Nations General Assembly in September if Israel doesn't take steps to end the humanitarian situation in Gaza and end the war. Prime Minister Keir Starmer made the announcement on Tuesday, outlining 4 key conditions for Tel Aviv.
End the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a 2-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza.
Backing the Prime Minister's announcement, Foreign Secretary David Lammy reinforced the message.
His Majesty's government therefore intends to recognise the state of Palestine when the UN General Assembly gathers in September here in New York.
Liberal Democrat leader also, Sir Ed Davey, welcomed Starmer's announcement as a crucial step, but urged the government to act without delay. And more than 255 MPs, including more than half of Labour's parliamentary party, have signed a letter urging unconditional recognition of a Palestinian state. However, Israel's government has firmly rejected the UK's position. The Israeli Foreign Ministry accused Britain of pandering to domestic political pressure and rewarding Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the move as dangerous appeasement, warning it would embolden terrorism at Israel's borders. US President Donald Trump also criticised Starmer's approach, suggesting it incentivises extremist groups and undermines prospects for peace.
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that.
Starmer's decision comes after last week, when France became the first G7 nation to announce it would formally recognise a Palestinian state in September, adding that to international pressure for a resolution to the Gaza conflict. However, not all European powers are aligned. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that Germany has no immediate plans to follow suit, arguing that recognition should be one of the last steps on the path to a 2-state solution. Globally, around 139 countries already recognise Palestinian statehood. In 2024, Spain, Ireland, and Norway joined that list, aiming to increase diplomatic pressure and support a ceasefire in Gaza. Though Palestinian representatives currently hold limited rights at the United Nations, Their statehood is recognized by numerous international bodies, including the Arab League. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen. UN agencies have described the situation as man-made mass starvation, blaming the Israeli government for restricting aid deliveries to the territory. Israel denies the allegations, stating that no restrictions exist and that there is no starvation in Gaza.
Meta will suspend all political, electoral and social issue ads across the EU from October, citing new transparency rules as overly complex and legally unclear. The EU's new regulation aims to combat disinformation, foreign meddling and misuse of voter data, with key provisions taking effect on the 10th of October. Meta said the law introduces unworkable requirements that threaten personalised advertising and make compliance too difficult. But EU officials argue the rules are essential to protect elections and ensure citizens know who is targeting them and why. Google previously announced it would also halt political advertising in the EU ahead of the regulation. The United States has accused EU of restricting free speech through its Digital Services Act, just 9 days before a trade deal deadline. Washington's campaign against the law has included social media posts and public speeches, drawing backlash from France and EU officials. EU officials strongly reject the charge, saying the law targets only illegal content and safeguards freedom of expression. France responded with its own messaging, defending European digital rules and hinting at possible retaliation against US tech firms. An 8.8 magnitude earthquake has hit off Russia's far east, damaging buildings and triggering tsunami alerts from Japan to Hawaii. Residents in several countries are being urged to stay away from the coast.
A powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake has struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, triggering tsunami warnings across the Pacific. The quake, one of the strongest in the region in decades, has put several countries on high alert. A kindergarten was damaged in Kamchatka, but officials confirmed no children were inside and no injuries were reported.
Today's earthquake was a challenge for all of us. It's the strongest quake in decades of tremors. According to preliminary estimates by specialists and seismologists, the magnitude of the earthquake was 7.7 to 7.9, and there is a tsunami threat warning. That's why I am again repeating my plea to stay away from coastlines. Specialists have already begun a thorough inspection of sites and socially significant facilities for possible quake damage.
In Japan, authorities issued tsunami warnings for eastern coastal areas, with waves expected to reach up to 3 meters. Many have already found shelter in fear the warnings may become reality.
For citizens in the areas included in the tsunami warning, please evacuate to a safe place immediately, such as designated evacuation buildings and hills. We are receiving reports and currently monitoring for any details of damage or casualties.
The Japan Meteorological Agency warned that a major tsunami could continue for more than a day following the earthquake. Tsunami alerts have been issued for Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, and parts of Micronesia. US officials warn hazardous waves could arrive within hours.
As the mayor indicated, our #1 priority is to get people to safety. Our #1 priority is life safety. And so right now it's an easy thing. Get away from the beaches, get inland, and get upward. So that's our message right now.
US President Donald Trump took to X to urge residents in Hawaii to stay alert and follow local tsunami warnings. Authorities in affected regions are urging people to remain vigilant and stay away from the coast until further notice.
Record-breaking heat has sparked wildfires across several countries, putting firefighters and emergency teams under intense pressure.
Wildfires have been a persistent threat across southern Europe and surrounding regions, with countries facing worsening conditions each year due to rising temperatures and drought. Spain and Portugal have previously joined forces, coordinating resources and training to tackle these fires more effectively as their fire seasons grow longer and more intense. In Spain, a large wildfire near El Arenal town in the central province of Avila has burned more than 500 hectares of forest. More than 200 firefighters, supported by air tankers, have been battling the blaze amid steep and rugged terrain. Residents from nearby Montbeltran were evacuated as a precaution, but were allowed to return home after conditions improved. Authorities remain on high alert as strong winds continue to threaten the area. Meanwhile, in Portugal, over 1,300 firefighters backed by water-bombing planes are fighting 3 major wildfires in the central and northern regions. In the Arauca area, popular for its natural beauty, residents were evacuated and hiking trails closed due to the advancing flames. The fires come amid a prolonged dry spell and intense heat wave that has left forests bone dry and highly flammable. Spain has also sent aerial support to help Portugal control flames in border areas. Greece has also faced multiple blazes recently, straining firefighting teams amid soaring summer heat. A recent blaze near Athens that threatened neighbourhoods close to a university campus. Firefighters used helicopters and aircraft to bring the fire under control after a week of intense heat. The country has experienced multiple wildfires this summer as soaring temperatures and strong winds fuel the flames. This summer, wildfires have devastated forests and forced thousands of evacuations across southern Europe and the Mediterranean. Experts say climate change is increasing the frequency and intensity of such natural disasters, making summers hotter and drier. In recent years, the region has seen record-breaking heat waves, pushing temperatures well above seasonal averages and creating perfect conditions for wildfires to spread rapidly.
At the World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, Chinese Premier Li Qiang has made a bold call for a new global AI governance body, warning against the monopolization of artificial intelligence by a few powerful countries and tech firms. Li urged for inclusive international cooperation to ensure AI serves all, not the select few. AnewZ Mahnur Maktoum has more.
At the World Artificial Intelligence Conference held in Shanghai, Chinese Premier Li Qiang emphasized the need for an inclusive international cooperation on AI development and regulation. In his keynote address, he urged for the establishment of a new global AI governance body aimed at preventing AI from becoming an exclusive game controlled by a handful of countries or powerful tech corporations. He warned that unequal access and fragmented regulatory standards could further widen geopolitical disparities and prevent the technology's full potential to serve all of humanity. China's response reflects the growing concern of monopolization of AI advancement by major players, especially the West. Premier Li urged all countries to collaborate on the establishment of open standards, ethical guidelines, as well as safety frameworks, calling for fair, inclusive, and a mutually beneficial AI ecosystem. His remarks also come amid heightened global debate over balancing innovation with regulation, especially during this rapidly evolving AI landscape, as well as mounting geopolitical tensions over tech competition. Premier Li also highlighted China's commitment to responsible AI development, noting the ongoing efforts to draft national AI regulations and promote international exchanges on technology and ethics. Manu Maktoum, AnewZ, Beijing.
Kazakhstan has reached an agreement with the European Union on coal shipments via Russian ports. As a result, the EU's 18th sanctions package includes certain exemptions. The transit of Kazakh coal through selected Russian ports is now permitted again under specific conditions. Our correspondent in Almaty, Fariza Kalimurzina, has more details.
The European Union has made a limited exception in its 18th sanctions package permitting the transit of Kazakh coal through select Russian ports. This information comes from Kazakhstan's Ministry of Trade. The ministry clarified that this exemption is very narrowly defined. It applies exclusively to coal originating from Kazakhstan owned by non-residents of countries under EU sanctions. Russian ports can be used only as transit points for loading or shipment, and storage, purchase or processing of coal in these ports remains prohibited. Earlier in February 2025, the European Union's 16th sanctions package had completely blocked transactions involving several Russian ports. This created serious challenges for the stability of Kazakh coal exports to Europe, especially affecting the port of Ust-Luga, which is a key transit route. Despite these restrictions, the European Union remains a crucial market for Kazakh coal. Last year, Kazakhstan exported 5.2 million tons of coal to Europe, generating more than $300 million in revenue. This accounted for more than half, or 51.8% of the country's total coal exports. And in the first 5 months of this year, exports to Europe reached 1.6 million tons, representing 38.5% of total coal exports for that period. Among the largest buyers of Kazakh coal are Poland, Italy and the Netherlands. Italy, in particular, increased its purchases by 4.4 times over 11 months, reaching approximately 230,000 tons and spending more than $41 million. Experts emphasize that Kazakhstan has strong potential to expand coal exports to Europe. Recent heat waves across the continent have increased electricity demand, which in turn raised the need for thermal coal. Fuel prices in Europe have risen and Kazakhstan remains one of the region's reliable suppliers. And future export trends will largely depend on gas prices and coal stock levels at European ports. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ.
New survey data from Armenia reveals growing dissatisfaction among citizens, especially young people, towards the country's current political and social direction. Conducted by the International Republican Institute, the poll paints a complex picture of public sentiment towards Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's government and the ongoing peace process with Azerbaijan. Here's our detailed report.
The latest survey by the International Republican Institute shows almost half of Armenia's population, 49%, believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. Only 36% think otherwise. This poses a challenge for Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, particularly as dissatisfaction runs high among Armenia's youth. Nearly half of those aged between 18 and 35 expressed discontent, despite the government's emphasis on policies aimed at this demographic. Yet, despite declining support, Pashinyan remains Armenia's most trusted politician, although with just 13% approval. Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan follows far behind with 5%, while former President Robert Kocharian received just 4%. Significantly, a striking 61% of respondents expressed trust in no political figure at all, indicating a growing disconnect between Armenian society and its political class. Youth disengagement is particularly evident. 63% of young Armenians either do not know who to support or have chosen not to vote at all. When asked about pressing issues, Armenians overwhelmingly pointed to security and border protection, followed by economic struggles, unemployment and rising costs. The survey also highlighted contrasting views on peace with Azerbaijan. While 47% support a peace treaty, significant opposition comes from younger Armenians. 48% reject the peace agreement, compared to 58% support among older generations. When asked about Prime Minister Pashinyan's priorities over the next 6 months, respondents emphasized peace, border security, army strengthening, and a shift in foreign policy. These top concerns align closely with the ongoing peace negotiations with Azerbaijan. These insights underscore a critical moment for Armenia. The government must urgently address youth dissatisfaction to build broader consensus on the peace agenda. For Azerbaijan, these findings strengthen arguments advocating constitutional changes in Armenia, ensuring lasting peace and stability in the region.
Previously, we discussed the declining popularity of Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan with Richard Girogosyan, director of the Regional Studies Centre from Yerevan. Here's what he had to say.
Well, they are very relevant. This U.S. implemented public opinion survey is actually the most reliable that's conducted in Armenia. And the findings should be a wake-up call for the Armenian government. However, this does represent a snapshot in time. In other words, what's equally important here is not just the trend of declining popularity of the incumbent government, but that there is no alternative still. The opposition, widely discredited, has suffered an even greater decline. So in the end, this should be a wake-up call for the incumbent authorities, but nevertheless, it's not as significant as it would seem.
Pro-Kremlin political analyst Sergei Markov, speaking on Russian Tsargrad TV, claimed that the root of current tensions between Moscow and Baku lies in a downed aircraft incident. According to Markov, Baku is demanding an apology for the incident with the Azal plane that took place near Aktau over the Caspian Sea in December 2024.
The reason for what is happening between Russia and Azerbaijan is undoubtedly the plane. As is known, we shot down the plane. They think that it is known for sure that we shot down the plane, and they know that our authorities also know for sure that they shot down the plane, and they want us to apologize the way they did when they shot down our helicopter.
Pressure is mounting across the region as neighbouring countries and Europe ramp up efforts to deport undocumented Afghan migrants, with Iran now leading the way. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more details from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Iran's interior minister says over 1 million undocumented Afghan migrants have already been returned to Afghanistan. Iranian media quotes Eskinar Momini as saying that out of an estimated 6 million Afghans living in Iran, 2 million are without legal status and must return as part of the country's regularization policy. The United Nations reports that between January and July 19 this year, 1.5 million Afghans have returned home from neighboring countries, 1.2 million of them from Iran alone. According to the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Iran deported 460,000 Afghans in just the first 19 days of July. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, during a visit to Tehran, called for an end to forced deportations and proposed a trilateral meeting between Iran, Afghanistan and the UNHCR to address the humanitarian fallout. Meanwhile, Switzerland is also exploring engagement with the de facto Afghan authorities. Swiss media reports says several lawmakers support working with Afghan consular officials to facilitate deportation. Some have even suggested moving Switzerland's migration staff from Islamabad to Kabul to set up coordination. As regional and European countries tighten their migration policies, many Afghans now face an uncertain and increasingly pressured return home. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for AnewZ.
That's all we have from Baku for now. Stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates.